Hey guys, tonight we're climbing aboard something ancient, humble, and just a little bit magical. A canoe made not for a lake or a lazy afternoon paddle, but for the Pacific Ocean itself. You're standing barefoot on a wooden deck, polished smooth by generations of quiet feet. The sky above you is impossibly vast, spangled with stars you don't recognize. The Milky Way stretches like powdered sugar across black velvet. Somewhere out there, there's land, and someone here knows exactly where it is, even if there's no map, no compass, no GPS app to bail you out when you make a wrong turn. You'd probably be lost by now. You'd definitely be sunburned, possibly hungry, and most likely crying quietly into your palm leaf cloak. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I love seeing this sleepy little community across time zones. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie down on the cool wooden planks, letting the creak of the outrigger lull you. There's a rhythmic splash beneath you, the canoe sliding across the ocean's skin like a slow sigh. Around you, other crew members move with the kind of quiet that only comes from doing the same thing over and over until it becomes sacred. No one yells, no one panics. They're trimming sails by moonlight, whispering instructions, and adjusting the ropes with fingers that know the feel of salt and wind like second nature. This isn't just travel, it's ritual. And you're not just a passenger, you're part of it now. These ancient Pacific navigators didn't stumble blindly through waves hoping for a miracle. They watched, listened, felt. The stars above weren't just pretty dots, they were coordinates. If you knew which constellation rose after which, and how far above the horizon it hovered, you knew where you were. You didn't need a compass when the sky itself was telling you which way home was. And here's your first fact. Navigators in places like Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia learned thousands of star paths. Thousands. Not just Orion or the North Star, like we memorize for extra credit. No, we're talking entire night skies, rotated and mirrored depending on season and hemisphere. Some were taught from childhood, others were sung as chants passed down orally from elder to apprentice like bedtime lullabies with a built-in GPS. There's a fringe theory, one that's hotly debated, that these star paths weren't just mental maps. Some researchers suggest they may have been imagined three-dimensionally like a mental latticework of glowing points you could walk across in your mind. Historians still argue whether this was visualization, trans-state mapping, or just poetic language. But either way, it's chill, deeply chill. And here's the weird thing, the chill was part of the system. You didn't rush on a voyage. You didn't panic. Anxiety and confusion didn't just make things unpleasant, they threw off your sensory calibration. And when your compass is your own heartbeat and skin, you can't afford noise in the system. So these sailors cultivated calm, not just for comfort, but for survival. You can almost feel it now, the canoe under you, gently rolling the air, warm but damp, like a blanket pulled off a line at sunset. You hear someone softly chanting, not for show, not even really for the others, but for the ocean itself. A way of telling the sea, I see you, I'm listening, please don't throw a tantrum tonight. You sit up and glance around. No one seems worried. One man is chewing something, maybe dried breadfruit, or taro. Another is braiding a rope from coconut fiber with the kind of half-focused ease that only comes from knowing your fingers better than your eyes. A young woman, maybe 16, is reclining near the bow with her feet up and her eyes half closed, tracing the movement of the stars as if she's reading a bedtime story in the sky. And you're right where you need to be, because on this canoe movement is slow, ritual is quiet, and rest, real nourishing spirit level rest, is baked into the voyage like salt in the wood. So go ahead, let your shoulders fall, let your mind stop gripping everything so tightly. You're floating now, not just through water, but through history, and it is surprisingly gloriously soothing. The night deepens as you settle farther into the voyage. You're still nestled on the canoe's deck, the stars above ticking slowly across the sky like a clock made of fire. But now you shift your gaze downward. Past the mast near the central hold, a few crew members are crouched around something small and steaming. The scent reaches you, earthy, rich, vaguely sweet. Taro root, roasted, mashed, shared. Meals on this canoe aren't just about calories, they're rituals of rhythm. You don't eat because the clock says noon. You eat when the sea says now's a good time. The waves have flattened, the wind has stilled just a touch, and that means it's okay to rest and refuel. A bowl is passed to you, carved wood, smoothed from use, and you take a bite. It tastes like warm mud and subtle kindness. And somehow, it's perfect. Taro, by the way, isn't just food, it's genealogy. In many Pacific cultures, taro is considered an ancestor. In Hawaiian lore, the first taro plant was the stillborn brother of the first human child. You eat it with a kind of quiet respect, and while your mouth is full, no one talks. Not because it's rude, because it's sacred. And as the taro is scraped from its bowl, another ritual begins. A crew member unrolls a small bundle of cloth. Inside are tattooing tools, combs made of bone pigment from burned cuckoo nuts that's in a tiny hammer. This isn't for decoration, it's navigation. A line of dots on the arm to mark the number of voyages completed. A curved hook on the chest for the stars followed home. Some elders say you don't truly know your way until you've felt it etched into your skin. Historians still debate whether these tattoos served as literal maps or ceremonial affirmations. Were they practical spiritual? Did they encode information for future journeys or simply honor those already made? No one agrees. But everyone nods when someone receives one. It means you belong now. You carry the voyage in your blood. And if you think that's cool, wait till you hear about tide charts. There are no tide charts on this canoe, no laminated printouts, no apps. But the knowledge is still here, woven into chance, whispered from grandparent to grandchild, learned by watching crabs, listening to reef echoes, and observing how long it takes for a coconut to drift back to shore. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some island communities, people could tell the hour of the tide just by the angle of moonlight reflecting off the wet stones at the edge of the beach. Not the moon in the sky, the moon in the rock. Can you imagine being that in tune with your surroundings? You'd never need a calendar again. Just step outside barefoot and let the land whisper the schedule into your toes. And in this moment on this canoe, you start to feel what that's like. Everything around you hums with a slow, easy logic, a rhythm too patient for alarms. There's no scramble, no rush, just a gentle unfolding of time, marked not by bells or deadlines, but by the changing quality of light, the shape of clouds, the taste of salt in the air. You shift slightly your back, pressed against the carved side of the canoe. It's smooth and warm from the sun's memory. Someone nearby is softly humming, not a tune you recognize, but something repetitive and soothing. You suspect it's both a lullaby and a mnemonic device lyrics that describe constellations in metaphor wrapped in melody, so the next generation will remember. You catch a phrase, the shark sleeps beneath the twins. You don't know which stars that means, but it doesn't matter. It's not for you to decode, it's for them to preserve. You glance down again and see a woven mat folded neatly by the cargo hold. Another ritual sleep, carefully prepared. The mat is layered over planks smoothed by years of feet. A small pillow made from coiled pandanus rests at one end. Beside it, a water gourd and a stone charm shaped like a turtle. It's not just a bed, it's a message. Here lies someone who deserves peace. And even as the canoe continues forward, silent, purposeful, you realize you're starting to drift too. Not away from the voyage, but deeper into it. So close your eyes a little if you like. You won't miss anything loud. Nothing here rushes. Nothing here demands. This is the kind of history that hums like a lullaby. The canoe rocks gently beneath you, a rhythm so consistent, it's hard to tell where your heartbeat ends and the ocean begins. You shift onto your side, the scent of salt and old wood curling in your nose, and listen not for voices or sails or waves, but for something deeper. And then you feel it, a low, slow rise under the hull, followed by a weightless drop. Another swell passes beneath. This one comes at a slightly different angle. You don't see it. You don't hear it. You feel it. A bump under your back, a subtle twist in the canoe's posture. It's like the ocean is speaking in Morse code, but only to those who've learned its language through skin and spine. This, you realize, is the art of reading swells. Ancient Pacific navigators didn't need instruments. They had their own bodies. Lie flat on the deck long enough, and you start to distinguish between northern swells and eastern ones, between regular wind-driven chop and the long, slow pulse of a storm born hundreds of miles away. Your bones become seismographs. Your skin becomes a chart. This method is so subtle, it almost sounds like fantasy, but it's real. Polynesian wayfinders trained for years to sense oceanic patterns. They even had a name for it in some cultures, tilapa, the flashing light of the sea. It's a real phenomenon, though its mechanism is still debated. Some describe it as streaks of light that shimmer beneath the surface, pointing toward land long before it appears on the horizon. Historians still argue whether tilapa is electrical discharge, reflected bioluminescence, or something entirely different. Western science hasn't pinned it down, but the navigators, they just shrug and say, "We've always known it." You close your eyes again, letting the canoe rock you as you pretend to be one of them. A calm voyager, a sea whisperer, a body attuned to the movement of the world, and then someone taps your shoulder with the quietness of a leaf falling. A young navigator in training gestures for you to scoot over. She takes your spot and lies down, arms by her side, eyes closed. You watch her chest rise and fall in time with the swell. She's not sleeping, she's calibrating, aligning herself with the water. You scoot to the other side of the deck, giving her space. There you find a curved wooden platform built into the edge of the canoe. It looks like a chair without legs, slightly reclined, padded with dried grasses, and wrapped in tightly woven rope. Someone's resting there, head tilted back, humming under their breath. It's not just comfort, it's ceremony. In many Pacific cultures, the act of sitting, lying, or leaning wasn't just about rest, it was about tuning. A trained navigator would lie in the center of the canoe at night, surrounded by silence, and feel the conversation between sky and sea. When the stars moved, the swell shifted. When the wind turned, the rhythm adjusted. It was a nightly communion part, sleep part, science part, spirituality. And yes, this person eventually fell asleep, but not before logging every wave that touched the hull. Here's your quirky tidbit of the night on longer voyages. Some navigators created ocean maps in their minds, not visual, but physical. They'd imagine a stick chart of swell directions and adjust their mental map every time a wave hit differently. They could go hundreds of miles like this without a single visual cue, just water, wind, and the stars. And you thought memorizing street names was impressive. As the night wears on, you feel yourself absorbing the pace. Not just observing it, but becoming it. You haven't seen a clock in hours. No countdowns, no checklists, but just the gentle invitation to be here now. Not in a rushed, modern mindfulness kind of way, but in the ancient, quietly attentive sense of presence. Someone offers you a drink, a coconut cracked open its water, cool and slightly sweet, no straw, just your lips and the moonlight. You sip slowly, savoring the way it softens your throat, the way it echoes the hush of everything around you. The navigator beside you mutters something in a language you don't understand, but the tone is kind, sleepy, amused, probably something like city folks always drink too fast. You smile and lie back down your head, finding the groove worn into the deck from years of other travelers. The stars blink overhead, and the canoe leans into another long, slow turn. You let it take you, because tonight the swell is your lullaby. The stars are beginning their slow descent, now trading places with one another, like dancers in a slow, deliberate waltz. You're still on the canoe, tucked among ropes and woven mats, but now something shifts, not in the sea beneath you, but in the air above. A different kind of light, not the silver shimmer of stars or the glow of the moon. No, this light is gold, soft, fuzzy at the edges. Sunrise, and with sunrise comes math, but not the kind that gives you a headache. You sit up stretching and spot a figure crouched at the bow of the canoe, holding a small bowl of water in her hands. She's staring into it like it holds secrets, and maybe it does. This is navigation, ancient Pacific style. Reflections on water, the angle of the sun, the tilt of a shadow on a coconut husk. There are no compasses here, no sextants, just eyes, hands, patterns passed down like lullabies. She dips her finger in the water, watches the ripples, then looks up at the sky. Nods. No announcement. No flourish. Just a shift in sail position, and the canoe eases ever so slightly onto a new heading. And now you notice it others stirring. Not all at once, not with alarms or shouting, but in a natural, unhurried wave. One person sits up and starts to braid their hair. Another cracks open a fermented breadfruit pod and grimaces as they take a bite. Apparently, it smells awful but does the job. This morning routine isn't chaotic. It's chill, deeply chill. You're handed a sliver of coconut and a strip of dried fish, And yes, it's salty, but somehow just right. Breakfast on the Pacific. And here comes the math. Not scribbled in a notebook, but sung. A navigator begins a chant not to entertain but to remember. Each verse corresponds to a constellation. Each line represents a directional shift. You hear names you've never heard before, Te Kainga Fa'a Ali Manua. These aren't just stars, they're waypoints, anchors in the sky. Historians still argue how much of this celestial chanting was standardized and how much was personal. Were these universal systems, or did each family have their own mnemonic constellation poems? The answer, as always, is both. Knowledge was communal, but also cherished, like a favorite bedtime story, repeated not for new information, but for comfort. You spot a bundle of dried pandanus leaves being unwrapped nearby. Inside is a set of carved sticks, bent and lashed into a spiderweb-like grid. It looks fragile, but your guide handles it like treasure. This is a stick chart, a map of swells. The bends represent wave patterns, the shells represent islands, and the spaces between those are what matter most. They show where the water shifts, where currents tangle or smooth. You don't read it with your eyes, you feel it. Quirky tidbit time in the Marshall Islands. These stick charts were used for training, not during actual voyages. The real maps were memorized. The charts, just reminders, kind of like flashcards for the ocean. Someone nearby jokes about you being map blind. You don't take offense. You're still sipping coconut water and trying to remember which way is north without using your phone. A young boy sidles up beside you, holding a seashell to his ear. You expect him to say, "Listen to the ocean," but instead he points out that this one is for measuring sound, not for hearing it. He places it near the edge of the canoe and listens to the way it resonates with each wave. Big swells sound lower, he mumbles. Small ones hiss. You stare at him, baffled. He shrugs. Everyone has their own tools, and that's when it hits you this isn't ancient technology. It's a mindset. It's using what you have where you are in the moment. A bowl of water, a song, a stick, a shell. It's the math of presence, of trusting the wind, the sky, and your own breath. You close your eyes again, the sun now warming your face as the canoe glides on. A gentle breeze tousles your hair. Someone starts humming again, another star chant perhaps, or just a tune for the morning. You don't know the words, but you understand the rhythm, and for now that's enough. You've finally found a spot that feels just right. The deck is warm. The curve of the canoe cradles your back, and the breeze lifts strands of your hair like it's tucking you in. You're not the only one winding down. Most of the crew is easing into a rhythm, now that feels suspiciously like nap time. Turns out, sleep aboard an ancient Pacific voyage wasn't an afterthought, it was part of the plan. You watch as one of the elder navigators curls himself against the side of the canoe, his leg draped loosely over a bundle of rope, his face shaded by a folded cloth. He doesn't announce it. Doesn't say, "I'm going to lie down now." He just slows, lowers himself, and the space around him, this little sliver of deck, becomes silent out of sheer respect. No one steps too close. No one jostles the ropes. A younger crew member quietly adjusts a sail nearby her footsteps, somehow even softer than before. A coconut shell rolls toward the sleeper, and someone intercepts it mid-spin, almost like they're playing goalie in the calmest game imaginable. This is what rest looks like on the open sea. deliberate, gentle, and deeply protected. You glance around and realize it's not just one nap happening. There's a rotation. People sleep in shifts, but not like soldiers or factory workers. It's fluid, organic. If someone's been steering since dawn, they rest. If someone else is wide awake and humming, they take over the lookout. There's even a term in some languages that loosely translates to drifting hour, a window of time in which half the crew rests while the other half watches, sings, adjusts, and prepares. The cycle flows like the ocean around it. Historians still debate how formal these shift systems were. Some argue that they followed precise, hour-based rotations. Others suggest it was more intuitive, a communal understanding of who needed what and when. Whatever the truth, one thing's for sure, nobody needed a wake-up alarm. The canoe didn't run on clocks. It ran on kindness. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some traditions, people believed that waking someone too quickly could break the dream net, a web of guidance sent by ancestors. If you interrupted that process, you didn't just spoil their rest. You may have interrupted a message from beyond. That's a heavy burden for someone who just wanted to ask if there were more yams. So instead, the culture developed cues, soft touches, songs used as wake-up tones. Even the way food was passed to someone resting was different, closer to an offering than a meal. No one clattered plates, no one bellowed across the boat. And if someone was deep in rest, the crew let them float there on dreams, on swells, on silence. The canoe itself seemed to understand. It creaked softly like a cradle. Its frame shifted with the water, always supporting, never jerking. The sails flapped rhythmically, like a lullaby for wood and rope. You feel it in your chest, a slow exhale. Your own body softens. And before long, you're lying flat again, one arm behind your head, the other resting loosely on your belly. The clouds drift lazily overhead, and even they seem to be napping. A bird glides past without flapping barely a twitch, and as your eyelids grow heavier, you hear it that chant again. This time, it's coming from the stern. Someone's reciting a lineage poem, almost whispering. Names of ancestors, islands, stars. You don't know if it's meant to guide the canoe or just soothe the soul. Maybe both. You catch a phrase repeated 3 times. Let the night hold you. It settles into your bones. And just like that, you drift. Not fully asleep, not fully awake. Somewhere in the gentle space in between. The same space the canoe occupies, gliding across a blue that stretches forever but never hurries. If someone were to paint this moment, it would look boring. But to you, it feels like everything. You wake, or at least you think you do, to the quiet sound of sanding. Not the screech of machines, but the slow, rhythmic rasp of stone on wood. A few feet away, one of the crew is crouched beside the hull, running a pumice rock along the outer beam with a kind of reverence usually reserved for sacred objects or sleeping babies. You sit up slowly. The light has changed again, sun higher now, bouncing off the surface of the sea and painting soft gold onto the canoe's frame. Everyone is awake, but no one is rushing. Someone's boiling something in a clay pot. Someone else is coiling a rope like it's an art form. But this crew member, this one's sculpting silence. Because here's the thing, this canoe isn't just a boat, it's a living thing. A floating temple, a memory made of trees and string and sweat. And carving it, maintaining it, isn't maintenance. It's meditation. You crawl over carefully and sit beside the worker watching as he buffs the wood. His hands are calloused, but his movements are gentle, even loving. Every stroke follows the grain, never against it. Every knot is left intact. The canoe remembers someone murmurs behind you. We just keep it comfortable. In many Pacific cultures, the canoe wasn't just a vessel, it was a spirit. You didn't build it, so you invited it into being. Trees were chosen after prayer. Chants were sung while carving. Even the first launch was a ceremony involving offerings, dances, and in some cases tears. Because once the canoe was born, it had a name, a soul, and a destiny. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic belief or literal spiritual practice. Did the builders really think the canoe was alive, or was it just a poetic framework to encourage craftsmanship? The truth probably lies somewhere in between and doesn't really matter, because either way, the result was the same canoes, built with devotion, kept with tenderness, and sailed with respect. You reach out and touch the wood beside you. It's smooth, worn by weather, but still warm from sun and human hands. You get the feeling that if you sat here long enough, you'd learn things, not by asking, just by listening. And nearby, the tools of carving are laid out on a mat, like offerings, stone, adzes, bone scrapers, palm fiber cloths, even tiny shells for sanding narrow edges. Nothing mechanical, nothing noisy, just time and skill. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some navigators believed that a canoe's spirit could get grumpy if it wasn't maintained lovingly. A creak in the hull wasn't just bad construction, it was a sign the canoe felt neglected. The solution? A full cleaning, a quiet apology, and sometimes even a chant sung directly into the wood. You glance at the crew member again. He hums softly now as he works the rasp of the stone, syncing with the rhythm of his voice. It's not a song you know, but it feels familiar, like something you've always known, even if you've never heard it. He pauses, runs his hand over the smoothed surface, and nods, satisfied. Then he reaches into a small pouch and pulls out a bit of crushed charcoal. Dipping his fingers in coconut oil, he smudges the mixture into a carved symbol on the canoe's side, a spiral wrapped in waves, marking the rest, he says quietly. It takes a moment to understand. He's carving stillness into the canoe, just like you'd place a stone on a grave or hang a ribbon from a door. It's a visual lull, a soft instruction to the universe we are not rushing today, and neither should you. You lie back again, the hull beneath you now a little darker from the charcoal polish. It feels even smoother, even more like part of the sea. A few others are gathering nearby, stretching, joking in low voices, one of them munching on something that crunches like dried banana chips. The worker finally sets down his tools. He brushes off his hands, wipes them on his tunic, and leans back beside you. He doesn't say much, just closes his eyes and smiles. And for a while nobody speaks, because sometimes the best conversations happen when the canoe talks back. A soft squawk breaks the hush, not alarming, not loud, just inquisitive. You sit up and glance toward the stern of the canoe, where a long-legged bird with glossy black wings is preening itself with smug precision. It blinks at you slowly, almost like it knows something you don't. This is not a stowaway. This is part of the crew. Meet the frigate bird navigator's companion, high-altitude scout, and sometimes, depending on who you ask, a divine whisperer. You scoot closer and watch as a young boy feeds the bird slivers of dried fish from his palm. The bird pecks delicately like royalty, accepting hors d'oeuvres. Then it hops up onto a perch fashioned from driftwood and lashed to the canoe's edge. This bird has a job. Frigate birds were, and in some places, still are used by Pacific navigators as organic radar. They fly high, far, and fast, and they don't land on the water, which means if a bird is seen returning to the canoe at sunset, odds are there's land within 50 kilometers. If it keeps circling, you keep sailing. Historians still debate how reliable this method actually was. Some argue that the birds were more symbolic than functional. Others insist that ancient navigators were so tuned to their behavior they could interpret even subtle shifts in flight patterns as signs. And a few suggest that the birds themselves were believed to carry messages between the living and the ancestors. You watch as the boy strokes the bird's neck. He doesn't like storms, he says matter-of-factly. He gets nervous first, like he's talking about an uncle with a bad knee. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some canoe builders carved birds into the prow, not just for decoration, but to signal to real birds that this was a safe place to land. A kind of spiritual lighthouse made of wood and hope. The boy turns and points toward a bundle of cloth near the sleeping mats. That one's hers, he says. She sleeps when we sleep. Sure enough, a tiny feathered charm made of black plumes and twine hangs from the bundle. Not superstition, not habit, just respect. You lie back again, watching as the bird lifts its wings, stretches, and settles back down. A nap for the navigator's best friend. And you're starting to realize how often animals have their own roles in this world, not just for meat or labor, but as colleagues, guides, companions on a voyage that's part ocean journey, part spiritual metaphor. Farther down the canoe, a man with sea-glazed eyes and a forehead tattoo shaped like a wave reaches into a pouch and removes a small clay figurine. It's a bird too roughly sculpted, with a beak tilted upward and wings outstretched. He sets it gently beside the helm, then touches his forehead to it briefly. A prayer, a thank you, you'll never know, and that's okay. The canoe rocks gently again, as if acknowledging the moment. Around you, the sky has shifted. The sun now leans toward the horizon, the clouds pinking at the edges, like they've been blushing in the warmth all day. The wind picks up just a little ruffling, the feathers of the bird, the ends of the crew's braids, and the reeds bundled beside the mast. And then a lullaby. Someone starts singing. A low, wordless tune, humming more than melody meant more for the canoe than for people. It's the sound you imagine if silence could hum. The frigate bird lets out a sleepy huff, nestles into its perch, and tucks its beak under its wing. You want to laugh. Of course the bird naps now. Of course everyone gets rest, even the ones with wings. You shift again, tuck your knees up, and feel the wind wash over you like a tide of breath. The crew settles into a hush, and the canoe sails on. And in the peace of that moment, with the bird sleeping, the sky glowing, and your body perfectly still, you think, yes, this is how you travel, with eyes open, with respect for everything around you, even the feathers. The sun is slipping low, now skimming the edge of the sea, like it's deciding whether to dive in or just flirt with the horizon a little longer. The air is still warm, but quieter, tinged with that strange melancholy that always comes with dusk, even in the middle of an open ocean. You're sitting with your feet just barely dangling over the edge of the canoe. Beneath them, the water glints copper and gold. Ripples feather out behind the hole. Someone passes you a small bowl of something sweet and sticky baked banana with a hint of coconut. You take a bite. It tastes like the end of a story, but the story's not done yet. Someone calls softly from the center of the canoe, not a shout, just a name spoken like a question. A few of the crew gather around a central pole where an elder sits cross-legged facing east. Before him, arranged neatly on a mat, are shells. Not just any shells. These are large, smooth some with natural holes, some strung on thin fibers of bark. This is the shell ceremony. In many Pacific cultures, shells were more than ornaments. They were memory, currency, calendar, chart. Some represented family lineages. Others marked the days passed since departure. A few even symbolized events at sea storms, births, sightings of land. Tonight the elder begins sorting the shells. One by one, he lifts them murmuring a name or phrase, then places each gently into a shallow bowl filled with seawater. The shells clink softly like distant bells under the surface. You watch transfixed. Every crew member, even the youngest, leans in with reverence. They're not just remembering where they've been. They're realigning their path mentally, spiritually, perhaps even cosmically. Historians still argue whether these shell ceremonies had fixed meanings or were interpreted on the fly. Were the shells assigned universal significance, or was it more about the feeling each navigator carried, like a journal made of intuition instead of ink? Either way, the ritual grounds everyone. You can feel it. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some islanders wore bracelets made of shell pieces that only made sense when held up to the stars. Certain holes would line up with constellations, serving as celestial cheat sheets. You had to be at sea, under open sky, for the meaning to click into place. You shift onto your knees, crawling gently forward for a better view. The elder doesn't stop or acknowledge you, but you feel welcomed anyway. The way you'd feel watching someone tend a fire or whisper to a sleeping child. It's personal, but it's also meant to be seen. After the last shell is placed, he dips both hands into the water, lifts a palmful, and lets it trickle down over the mat. Blessing, closure, or maybe just a habit. The crew breathes out as one, like a wave. Then slowly, everyone begins to prepare for the night. Blankets are unfurled, woven mats unrolled. A few hang cloth partitions along the canoe's spine, nothing that blocks sight completely, but enough to create the illusion of walls of rooms of privacy. Someone braids fresh leaves into little fans. Someone else rubs oil into sore joints. The frigate bird blinks once, twice, then tucks its head back under a wing. Apparently, we're on night mode now. One of the older crew, a woman with silver streaks in her hair and hands as sturdy as the canoe itself, lights a tiny bowl of dried herbs. The smoke is thin sweet, spiraling upward like it has somewhere better to be. She walks the length of the canoe, fanning the scent with a piece of bark. You inhale it and immediately feel your shoulders drop, not because it's magical, but because it feels like ritual, and that's often enough. She murmurs a phrase with each step, something rhythmic, almost like a mantra. It's not for you, it's for the canoe, the night, The stars. You lie down again, this time deliberately, arms at your side, feet slightly apart. The sea rocks you gently. The air hums with low conversation. Nothing urgent, just stories, reminders, jokes, too soft to carry far. And above you, the stars are starting to return. You look up and think that's it. That's the ceiling of this house. That's the roof of this floating temple. And as someone places a shell on a small shelf beside the steering oar, tonight's marker, tonight's offering, you feel it settle in your chest. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. The sky is velvet now, so deep, so dark it feels like if you reached up your hand would vanish. Stars crowd in thick and low, a glittering blanket that pulses with quiet energy. You're still lying flat on the canoe, your head cushioned by a rolled mat, and your breath matches the rhythm of the swells. The ocean below and the sky above seem to mirror each other, vast, alive, unknowable. Beside you, a soft voice rises. Not a shout, not even speech, really, just a low, melodic chant. Another joins in, then another. Before long, 4 or 5 voices are weaving together, not quite harmonizing, but definitely not clashing either. It's a star chant, a night map sung instead of drawn. Each verse names a constellation, each phrase a course correction. You recognize one Te Tokelau, the North Star, in this region's tongue. A fixed point, reliable, unmoving, the voice that never drifts. Others follow the Southern Cross, Orion's belt, the shark's tooth. Some you know by different names, others you only understand through tone and gesture. There's no sheet music, no written lyrics, just memory and muscle and trust. Historians still debate how consistent these chants were between islands. Some scholars suggest they were customized by region. Others argue they were closely guarded knowledge, passed through select families. But everyone agrees on one point: the chants weren't entertainment. They were instruments. You turn your head and watch the chanters, eyes open but not looking at each other. They stare skyward, their mouths moving in time with their bodies. Each sway of the canoe becomes part of the beat. The sea is the drum. The wind is the silence between verses. Quirky detail of the night. Some navigators, reportedly trained by being woken randomly at night, asked what stars were overhead and what direction the canoe should be facing while half asleep. And they got it right. Not because they were geniuses, but because they lived with the stars, not just under them. Someone nearby nudges you gently and offers a carved object. It's a star compass, not like the Western kind, but a circular disc etched with directional markers, each aligned with specific star paths. It's used as a mental grid. You don't look at it while sailing. You memorize it until it becomes second nature. You hold it in your hands, feeling the grooves, imagining how each notch aligns with a point in the sky. It's wood, but it feels like a map of gravity itself. You close your eyes, trying to recall which star rises where and when. It's overwhelming, but it's also soothing, because here's the secret: these people didn't navigate by dominating nature. They sailed by surrendering to it, letting the sky speak, letting the canoe listen, letting the body remember. Nearby, the chanting slows. One by one, the voices trail off, not abruptly, but like candles blowing out. You open your eyes and see a crew member pointing not dramatically, just a lazy gesture toward the east. A star has risen. A cue, a clue. The helmsman adjusts the sail slightly, The canoe turns so slowly you hardly notice until the stars shift in your field of vision. It's like the entire boat has inhaled, paused, exhaled, and in that moment, as the stars shimmer above and the ocean hushes below, something unexpected happens. You forget where you are, not in a scary, lost kind of way, in a peaceful, untethered way. You forget your phone, your city, your calendar. You remember only stars, wood voices, and water. The canoe rocks, the sea breathes, and you tiny human starlit dot float perfectly between everything. Someone passes by, places a palm leaf cover over the water jug, tucks a mat under someone's head, brushes a loose reed back into its bundle. It's not bedtime here, it's ceremony. Every movement, every breath, every flick of the eye is part of the greater stillness. The sacred stillness of wayfinding, of being found. And when you finally let your eyes close again, the last thing you hear is a whisper of a chant, almost inaudible. May the sea remember you, and you think it already has. You wake to a canoe that's barely moving, not becalmed, just calm. The sea this morning is a flat mirror, soft as silk and just as reflective. The sky above is pale blue, streaked with thin clouds, like brushstrokes dragged across parchment. Even the wind seems reluctant to disturb the peace. Everyone is whispering, not because of some rule, but because it feels right. Like raising your voice here would ripple the water, upset the balance. You sit up slowly, spine cracking a little, and realize you're not alone. Half the crew is up-seated in quiet pairs or small circles, eyes closed or gazing out into the distance. No one is rowing. No one is navigating. This apparently is a different kind of journey. It's time for the morning silence. In many Pacific voyaging traditions, the stillness of morning wasn't a void to fill, it was something to honor. A space between sleep and speech, between movement and momentum, a breath for the canoe, the crew, and the sky. You take it in, the salt in the air, the faint hiss of tiny waves brushing the side of the hull, the distant call of a bird you can't see, the scrape of someone peeling taro in the corner. That's all. No talking, no rushing, just a bit being. One of the elders, wrapped in a light woven cloak, begins to hum not a song exactly, but a tone. A single note held long and low, like the sound of a conch shell underwater. The others don't join in, but they don't interrupt either. It's like the canoe becomes a temple for a few minutes, and the ocean an altar. Historians still argue whether this kind of silence was codified ritual or cultural instinct. Were there rules for this pause, or was it simply understood over generations, taught not in words, but in how people behaved as they grew? No written instructions, just a quiet that trained you by living inside it. You dip your fingers into the sea just to feel it. Cool, gentle, unhurried. Even the water knows this is not a moment for splashing. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some island groups, voyaging canoes were greeted at shore, not with shouting, but with silence. If the journey had been long or especially sacred, the welcoming party would stand still, quiet heads bowed. No drums, no chants, just respect. Back on the canoe, someone begins to pass around a pot of hot water steeped with crushed ginger and pandan. You accept a cup, the steam curling into your face like incense. It smells like sunrise, like memory, like warmth. No one says cheers, No one clinks cups, they just sip. And you realize this isn't a pause in the journey. This is the journey. The stillness isn't what you do between action, it is the action. It's the same silence that hangs in the temple when the last candle is blown out. The same hush of the forest before a bird calls. The same quiet in your chest right before you fall asleep. You watch as a child no more than 6 or 7 tiptoes to the edge of the canoe with a bundle of dried leaves. She places it gently on the water's surface. It drifts away slow and even, like it knows it has time. What is it you whisper to the person beside you? A thank you, they whisper back, for safe dreams. You nod because you've had them. You lean back again, sip your tea, and stare at the sky. It's changing now, lightening, shifting. The clouds have started to pull apart, and in the far distance the glimmer of something else. Maybe land, maybe sky pretending to be land. Doesn't matter. You know now that wherever you're going gently. And that's the whole point. The silence doesn't end, it softens, like music that fades instead of stopping. Voices return slowly, like birds at dawn. First a murmur, then a chuckle, then a short burst of laughter that gets gently shushed by a crew member who's still sipping ginger water like it's sacred. You stretch arms overhead and feel the canoe shift under your weight. The sun has cleared the horizon now, and golden light spills over the deck like warm honey. It lands on everything: the coils of rope, the carved paddles, the small polished stones tucked beside sleeping mats. And then something new: movement. Not frantic, not a flurry. Just the steady rhythm of the crew getting ready for what comes next. Lines are tightened, sails adjusted, food bundles checked. But it's not hurried, it's more like choreography. Every gesture has muscle memory, every task a rhythm of its own. You start to notice something else. Each person has a role, but the boundaries aren't rigid. The same person who was steering yesterday is now coiling rope. The one who led the chant is now slicing fruit. It's not hierarchy, it's harmony. In traditional Pacific navigation roles weren't always fixed. You trained in everything: steering, fishing, singing, carving, even dreaming. Because the canoe was a floating village, a community in motion, and everyone shared responsibility for its survival. Historians still debate how crews divided labor on long voyages. Some say there were formal ranks: master navigator, steersman, cook, lookout. Others suggest a more communal structure: fluid roles, adjusted day by day based on energy, weather, and intuition. Here's your quirky tidbit: in some regions, there was a designated listener, not someone who gave orders, but someone who stayed quiet, absorbed all movement and sound, and offered insight only when needed. A human barometer of vibes, if you will. Back on the canoe, you see something close to that now. A young man, quiet, observant, sits near the center, eyes half closed, not asleep, not fully awake. He's listening to the wind, the sea, the creaking wood. Every so often, someone glances at him before making a decision, tacking the sail, changing course, shifting supplies. You realize he hasn't said a word since dawn, but somehow he's directing traffic with silence alone. It's kind of incredible. You stand slowly, careful not to trip on the bundles, and begin to help coil a length of rope. No one asks you to. No one praises you for it. But a crew member smiles and nods, and that's more than enough. The rope is rough in your hands but clean, salt scented, familiar. You fall into the rhythm. Twist, loop, pull, stack. It's the kind of work that pulls you out of your head and into your body. And that's the magic of it. There's no space for anxiety when your fingers are busy. No room for doubt when you're matching the sway of a boat. The canoe moves forward, gliding like a whisper across the water. No engine, no fuel, just muscle memory and the oldest kind of power cooperation. And here's the beautiful part. Nobody's keeping score. Nobody's counting how many knots you tied, or how many coconuts you husked, or how many stars you named. The work matters, yes, but it's not what defines you. What defines you is how you do it, gently, with awareness, with respect, the same way you handle the canoe, the same way you handle dreams. You pause and wipe sweat from your brow, not because it's hard, but because it's good. The kind of work that makes your breath deeper, your thoughts quieter. A crew member offers you a drink from a gourd, cool, slightly sweet. It tastes like tamarind and patience. You take a long sip and look out over the water. The ocean stretches forever, but somehow it doesn't feel overwhelming, because on this canoe you're never lost. You're part of something, and that changes everything. Midday creeps in without fanfare. There's no clock to chime, no bell to mark the hour, just a subtle thickening of the air, the sound of crickets in the distance, and the way everyone's movements begin to slow, like they're sailing through syrup instead of seawater. You're lying under a woven shade now, its lattice pattern casting delicate shadows across your arms. The heat isn't oppressive, it's persuasive. It doesn't demand stillness, it invites it, and the crew listens. Someone sets down a paddle mid-repair. Someone else sighs, rolls to their side, and lets the canoe rock them like a hammock. Even the birds overhead are fewer, quieter. This is the hottest part of the day, and in many Pacific traditions, that means one thing: it's the sacred hour of rest. A midday siesta on land is one thing. A midday pause at sea, that's an act of alignment with the sun, the sea, and the limits of your own body. You glance around and see it a cultural choreography of calm. There are no orders barked, no alarms, just an instinctive deceleration. Even the sail hangs a little lower, its edge fluttering in half-hearted bursts, like it too is taking a break. Historians still debate whether this midday stillness was ritual or necessity. Was it a formalized pause embedded into voyage routines, or did it emerge organically born from years of collective intuition that bodies and boats move better when they know when to stop? You lie back again, let your eyes close. Here's your quirky tidbit in some island communities. The midday rest was accompanied by dreaming songs, gentle lullabies sung not to babies, but to adults as a communal sleep aid. They weren't lullabies like we know them today, but slow, repetitive vocal patterns meant to lull the mind into quiet. And sometimes it worked so well the crew would dream together. Same time, same boat, same stars hanging just beyond the veil of daylight. A crew member near you hums something now low and steady. No words, just sound. It blends with the creak of the hull, the whisper of the sea, the barely there flapping of a distant sail. Someone drapes a light cloth over your legs. Another passes a tiny bowl of water with a pinch of sea salt stirred in. not to drink, just to touch. You dip your fingers in, and it feels like permission. Permission to pause, permission to float, permission to not do for a little while. And you realize how rare that is in your life. Back home rest is something you squeeze in, something you apologize for, something you earn. But here it's assumed, expected, celebrated. Because voyaging isn't just about endurance, it's about sustainability. Not the environmental kind, though, that matters too, but the emotional kind, the physical kind, the kind of sustainability that says you can't cross an ocean if you burn out before sunset. You roll to your side, the mat soft under your shoulder, and let the sounds around you cradle your thoughts. The waves, the breath of someone nearby, the faint jingle of a carved charm swinging from a post. This canoe may be moving forward, but in this moment, you are not. And that's the point. This isn't the pause between things. This is the thing. You are exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what this moment requires. Nothing. When you next open your eyes, the light has shifted again softer, now filtered through clouds that weren't there before. The air smells different too. Still salty, still sun-warmed, but tinged with something sharper. Maybe rain, maybe distant islands, maybe just change. The canoe creaks a little more now. The wind has returned, but not in a hurry. It glides along the sail like a hand brushing silk. You sit up slowly, and almost at once the crew stirs in sync. It's time to check direction. Not with a compass, not with GPS, but with everything else. One by one they move to their stations. No one rushes, no one fumbles. The youngest boy, no older than 10, leans over the edge watching the water ripple past. He's not admiring the view. He's reading it. Yes, reading it. This is the ancient art of wave piloting. The Pacific isn't one ocean. It's many-layered. Swells from different directions meet and blend, forming a language underfoot. Experienced navigators can read that language the way others read sheet music. And today, you're about to witness it. One man, broad-shouldered hair bound back in a strip of palm fiber, closes his eyes and lies flat on his back across the center of the canoe. At first, you think he's resting again, but then you notice his hands pressed lightly against the hull on either side. His brow furrows, then smooths. His feet flex. He's not asleep. He's feeling the waves. Historians still debate the mechanics of wave reading. Some say it's learned through repetition. Others suggest it's an almost meditative trance, an altered state in which the body does the math before the brain catches up. Whatever the method, the result is astonishing. The man sits up, nods once, and murmurs a word. Someone adjusts the sail. You feel nothing. But the canoe shifts course. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some ancient navigators memorized wave patterns by building wave maps from sticks, long pieces to show major swells, curved ones for refracted waves, tiny shells to mark islands. Not for constant reference, but for practice, like flashcards made of driftwood. You ask quietly what direction you're sailing now. Someone answers, without turning the path of the bird. Not north, not east, the path of the bird. You don't need more explanation, because on this canoe direction isn't a line on a map. It's a feeling, a rhythm, a trust that the ocean will tell you where to go if you're willing to shut up and listen. You move forward toward the front of the canoe. Here another navigator sits perched on the edge, hand shading his eyes. He doesn't squint like someone searching. He scans steady focused. Every so often he mutters something to the helmsman. A tilt of the paddle, a nudge of the sail. Together they steer a boat without instruments, without guides, without even talking much. And yet, it works. It works better than your last road trip, with GPS screaming and someone in the back seat arguing about snacks. You glance back. The man who read the waves is humming now. It's not a song, not even a tune, just a low drone like he's syncing his body with the boat again. This canoe doesn't need a motor. It runs on presence, and it's contagious. You find yourself paying closer attention to everything: the sway of the water, the angle of the sun, the feel of wind on your cheeks. Not because you have to, because it feels right. The boy near the edge calls out excited. He's spotted something, a shape in the distance. Land, no, driftwood. A dark, polished log half submerged and bobbing gently. Everyone smiles anyway. Driftwood out here means current. It means other travelers. It means you're on the path. A path made of no roads, no signs, just salt and wind and memory. You feel the canoe lean slightly into its new heading. You lean with it, and as the water shifts beneath you, you think, I could get used to this. Not knowing where I'm going, but trusting that I'll arrive. You're back at the center of the canoe, where the sun now dances low on the western horizon, turning everything it touches gold. The sail glows, the water sparkles. Even the faces of the crew seem dusted with firelight, though the fire is skyborn and fleeting. A quiet settles again, not because it's time to sleep, but because it's time to gather. Tonight you'll witness something rare: the Talanoa. Talanoa isn't a specific ritual or a rigid ceremony. It's a conversation, but richer, deeper, slower. A cultural tradition found across many Pacific islands, where stories aren't just told, they're shared, not to persuade or prove a point, but to connect. A small mat is unrolled at the heart of the deck. People sit in a circle, cross-legged, palms resting on knees. There's no leader, no stage, no introduction. Someone clears their throat, glances around, and begins. It's a story about a voyage. Not this one. A different one years ago with a different crew, a different canoe. But the winds are the same, the stars unchanged, and the ocean just as wide. The storyteller's voice is low, rhythmic. Every few sentences, someone nods. Occasionally, someone hums in agreement. This is more than entertainment. It's how knowledge survives. Historians still debate the accuracy of oral traditions. Were they embellished, altered through retelling, or, as some believe, were they intentionally structured with repetition, metaphor, and cadence, so the truth remained intact across generations? Whatever the case, one thing is clear: these stories work. They teach, they soothe, they anchor. Here's your quirky detail: some navigators learned their first ocean routes, not from maps or training, but from bedtime stories. Fables that began with, when the shark follows the moon, or when the wind forgets its name. Clues hidden in metaphor, decoded only by those who listened with care. Tonight's story drifts into another, then another. Someone describes a dream they had the night before of a whale leaping beside the canoe. Another crew member nods. That's a good sign, they say, and pass the last of the banana cakes. You realize with a kind of hush in your chest that no one is recording this. No one is writing it down. But you'll remember it anyway, not because of the facts, but because of the feeling. The circle sways gently with the canoe's motion. Shadows grow longer. One by one, stars begin to appear. There's no conclusion, no applause, just a collective sigh as the stories trail off and the group sits in silence, letting the night wash over them. You lean back against a coil of rope, feeling the thrum of the wood beneath you. It's alive, not in a fantasy way, in the "this is a boat built by hands and hope" kind of way. The person beside you, older and quiet, offers a soft whisper. You sail better when your story is known. You don't respond, not out loud, but you nod, because yours is being woven now, wordless salt-streaked star-guided, and you're not just listening anymore. You're part of the tale. The last stretch of night draws itself over the canoe, like a blanket, dark, soft, absolute. It doesn't rush. It tucks itself in, gently smoothing out the creases of the day. The stars are back clearer now than you've ever seen them, each one trembling with light and story and memory. You lie on your back again, eyes tracing constellations you still can't name, but now somehow understand. You're not identifying them anymore. You're greeting them. You recognize their shapes, the way you'd recognize a friend walking toward you at dusk, familiar by silhouette, by movement, by presence. Around you, most of the crew is sleeping. No loud snores, just the subtle sound of shared breath, like waves in human form. A few remain awake, guardians of the dark, not to fight it off, but to accompany it. And near the front, one figure hums. It's the old chant again, the same one you heard when the sun set yesterday. Or was it the day before? Time has thinned here, stretched into something softer, like saltwater taffy, like mist. You're not sure anymore what hour it is, but you know what it feels like. It feels like nearing home, even if you've never seen the island ahead, even if you're not even sure there is an island ahead, because the canoe is more than a vessel now. It's a teacher, a sanctuary, a song that floats. You shift slightly, adjusting your mat. Someone stirs beside you and murmurs in their sleep. You catch one word, Moana, the ocean. It slips into your heart like a pearl. Here's your quirky tidbit of the night. Some ancient voyagers believed that dreams at sea were more potent, charged by the constant motion, the salt, the proximity to stars and sky. It wasn't just superstition. Dreams were guidance, navigation, prayer. In fact, some navigators made decisions based not on logic, but on what the ocean told them in sleep, and they were usually right. You glance toward the stern where a guardian sits, with a hand on the tiller, not steering now, just resting, just making sure. Because even now, especially now, the journey isn't paused. It's deepening. This is the part where the soul catches up. This is the part where the silence says more than any map. You think of all you've seen on wave readers, star channers, silent codes, fragrant tokens, shared meals, sacred naps. You think of the bead placed on a doorstep, the shell dipped in seawater, the red cloth fluttering in a hushed breeze, each one a message, a marker, each one saying someone rests here. And now that someone is you, you close your eyes, and the canoe keeps going. It doesn't need your guidance. It only needs your stillness. And in that stillness you are held, not by hands, but by ocean, by memory, by everything that has ever floated and dreamed and made it safely home. Let yourself stay here just a while longer. Let the hush drape over you, like the sail of a canoe slipping through starlight. Let your breathing deepen smooth, spread into your limbs like warm current. The air is still, the sea is slow, and above you, the stars keep their silent, ancient watch. You've traveled far, not just across imaginary waves, but into a rhythm older than sleep itself. No need to hold on to names or chants or shells. Let them drift. Let them become part of your breath. You are no longer just listening to the story. You are inside it, wrapped in it, rocked gently by it. So if your thoughts are still sailing, let them go. Let them drift like leaves on water, light, aimless, unbothered. Let your limbs soften. Let your thoughts fade. You are safe here. You are still. You are carried. And if you dream, may it be as vast as the Moana. May it hold the stars, and may no one disturb you.